Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And hello, everybody. Nice to have you with us on the Cricket Badger podcast, episode number 602. We're ploughing on towards the 700 now. And I'm very happy to say, got David Wiese with me on the pod today. David, very nice to see you. Very nice to meet you. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
And we're going to go through the Cricket Badger 20 questions. I've been a kind of admirer and big fan of yours. I do commentary on cricket, and I always like it when we get... how do I phrase this? The smaller nations in the kind of major tournaments, and Namibia on the kind of world stage have had some real good times of it in recent times. I mean, obviously you've retired from that now, but that must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always nice to play, a bit of international cricket and to come back after playing for South Africa for all those years, and then coming back playing for Namibia. It was really nice part of my career. It was something that was pretty special for me.
We're going to go through the Cricket Badger 20 questions, and the first one: do you know what a cricket badger is? First of all,
yeah, I've played enough county cricket in my time to know exactly what a badger is, who the badgers are, and the proper definition of the good old badger.
Would you class yourself as a cricket badger?
Not entirely, no. I think in my younger days, maybe I was a bit of a badger. But now I try and, stay away from the game as much as possible. I mean, it consumes so much of your life during the season that, now I try and stay away. So I'll call myself a semi-badger.
Semi-badger. I mean, I always think there's kind of two types of cricketers that I've met. There's some cricketers who, as soon as they take off the whites or the coloured clothing, and go off somewhere else, kind of cricket is left behind. Others go home. I mean, Jason Gillespie, who I knew when he was at Yorkshire, would go home and watch a test match after a full day's playing cricket. There's kind of two types, aren't there?
Yeah, it's almost like you're all in completely. You're completely obsessed by it, or you get the guys who's like, yeah, it's just a job. It's something that I enjoy doing, and but it's not who I am. It's just I carry on with the rest of my life. So there is definitely the complete two ends of the spectrum to it.
What is it about cricket that got you hooked in and has kept you? I mean, by the way, happy birthday for 2 days ago.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the big 4-0. Not sure what that. Yeah, that's what they say. I hope so. Hopefully, I've still got a couple of years ahead of me. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of cricket, growing up in South Africa. The weather's so good here, first of all. So, you're constantly outdoors, you're constantly just playing sport. And I've got an older brother, and we just used to, compete against each other in whatever sports we can, whether it was cricket, tennis, hockey, squash, golf, whatever it was, we just played the whole time. And the thing about cricket, I think just the team aspect of it. And, for me, it was always nice being out in the field with your mates. And, also it's quite a skillful game. It's rugby, I suppose it's a bit of skill, but also just a bit of brute force and power in that. But cricket, there's a lot of skill involved in it, and tactics, and I like that side of it also.
If not a cricketer, what would you have done with your life?
That is the $1 million question. No, well, I suppose that the obvious answer would be I would be an auditor, because I went to university and I studied and I qualified as an internal auditor. So I suppose that would be the easy answer. Back in my youth, I kind of was playing the idea of being like a forensic auditor or something. Quite boring, quite sitting in an office all day and not being very liked by everybody, I suppose. But I suppose that would be the easy answer. The dream you could say now, would be like a professional golfer or F1 racer or something like that. But I think more realistically, I probably would have just gone into auditing.
That would have been a very different life, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I can't see myself doing it now. And it's almost like, for me, it's 4 years of my life that I kind of wasted, because I'll never go into it now. It's not something that I'm really, interested in at all at this stage. But, at that time of my life, I wasn't really playing professionally. It was just, something that I was interested in over there. And, I suppose it was good for me also just to, have normal life and to experience going to university and having the responsibility of studying and actually graduating and passing and almost having a semi-normal life, I suppose.
It was your parents, wasn't it, that kind of said you need to do this?
Yeah, 100%. So, my dad is an accountant, so he's all about the numbers, about security and all of that. And, they knew I loved cricket, but, unfortunately for me, I suppose I was a bit of a late bloomer. So at school, there wasn't really any indication that I was going to do this professionally, even though I would have loved to have done it. It was always just like a pipe dream. And, they pushed me and they knew I loved the sport, but also they were realistic about things. So they pushed me to go to university. I wanted to go take the gap year, go play club cricket in the UK, like all young people want to go do. And they just kind of said to me, go to university. The UK will always be there. Go to uni. Go get your degree, and then once you finish with that, then you can go overseas and play for a season, whatever. But just while you're in the habit of actually studying it and being a scholar, just stick with it and just get a degree behind your name, which for me, I suppose, was really thankful that they kind of pushed me into that direction.
I should say thank you very much to seatfrog.com, by the way. Download their app, get free train travel, and well, it's not free train travel. You have to still pay a little bit. Cheaper train travel, and you can get discounted upgrades to first class and what have you. We'll play an advert for them halfway through, but thanks to Seatfrog for their sponsorship of the Cricket Badger podcast. Who has been the biggest influence on your cricket career? I mean, when you were at university and you say that cricket was a kind of still probably a pipe dream then, what was it that made the difference? What brought you back into the game and made it something that was full time?
I suppose it was a little bit of luck. Everybody always talks about you need luck in in your career, and it was big luck for me. I mean, I came from not a traditional sports school, from a smaller town. So when I went to university, it was a typical small city to small town to a big city, and I was way in over my head. And I went to the university's training session. The guys put me in the fourth team, and I was like, I'm not going to waste my time with that. And so I just went to go carry on with my studies, and then I suppose the like I said, the lucky thing for me was that then my provincial coach at high school, he became the head coach of one of the semi-professional teams, and then he got in touch with me and said to me, look, I know you're not playing at the moment, but just come have a little bit of fun, play a bit of club cricket again, and see where it goes. And from there it just snowballed. I suppose the other thing I need to mention is that up until the age of 19, I was a spin bowler, which kind of didn't really sit well with me. And it was only really when I got tired of getting hit out of the nets and started bowling, seeing that my career kind of took off again. So, there's a lot of those small moments that really, catapult you into the direction where you end up being.
That's sort of sliding doors moment. Without that call to say, come back and play for us kind of thing, you would have been an auditor now, probably.
100%. It's like I said, everything, you need a little bit of luck. You need things to go your way, and you need the guy to smash you out of the nets and come back and bounce him and hit him on the head, and then suddenly you're a pace bowler. So, it's all of those small little things that in the end it pushes you in the right direction.
It's funny when you talk to cricketers, how many of them started out doing something totally different. You as a spin bowler obviously turned out to be an all-rounder bowling pace. Stuart Broad started as an opener. There's kind of all sorts of different people that started it as in a different discipline, but then obviously as their bodies kind of maybe changed as they got a little bit older, probably were better suited for something different.
Yeah, so that was it with me. I mean, I'm 6'3" now, but I mean, up until 16, I was tiny. I was the smallest in the team, smallest in the class, and that kind of propels you to be a spin bowler, I suppose. And it was only when I hit a little bit of a growth spurt that I got a bit bigger, got a bit stronger. But then I still bowled spin because it was all that I knew. And then just one day, I suppose something snapped and I just ran in and bowled pace, and it kind of worked out for me. And since then, that was really the moment when things changed, and I wasn't just a spin bowler who batted, but I worked towards being a genuine all-rounder.
Many big moments in your career, but if I could take you back to one day and allow you to relive that day again, so you can experience the highs of that, one really good day in your career, which one would you pick?
Oh. But that's a really tough one because, I've had so many different stages in my career. I mean, the obvious answer would be, when I made my debut for South Africa, my ODI debut against New Zealand, it was at SuperSport Park, where I've played all my life for the Titans. So, my wife was in the stands, my family was there. It was just like one of those moments where, everything you dreamed of as a youngster, everything that you've worked for in your life, kind of just culminated into that moment. And to have that at my home field in front of my family and everything, singing the anthem, that for me was a special moment. And then the other one for me also, for a different sense, is when I played for Namibia, but when we beat Ireland to qualify for the next stage, the Super 8 stage in the T20 World Cup. That was a different experience for me, because it was something that I saw. It was, for me, it was amazing to be part of that team. It's a team that's my father's descent. He's from Namibia, so for that side of the family, it was cool for me to play for Namibia. But also for me to see how much it meant to the other guys. They all the associate players. They'd never really been on the big stage, and for us to go there, beat Netherlands and then beat Ireland to qualify for the next stage, and just for the guys to have that realization of, hang on, now we're playing against India, now we're playing against New Zealand, we're part of the big stage now. That was, for me, that'll always be a real special moment for me in my career.
I saw something you said where you'd said that your dad almost felt, you felt that, I don't think he verbalized this, but you felt he felt more proud of you playing for Namibia than he did when you played for South Africa.
Yeah. I'm sure, he was proud of me playing for South Africa. I always laugh. My dad is a very strong, silent type of guy. He's very soft and loving, but he's that strong, typical, South African Afrikaans type of, very strong, silent Afrikaans type of guy. And growing up, we always used to communicate with my mom. My mom would, she was a stay-at-home mom, so she would take us to school and to cricket and all of that. And even when I grew up at university, it would be my mom who would phone me. My mom would text me to find out if it was okay. Even playing games, my mom would always say, well done, good game, whatever. And I knew it would come from both of them, but it would be my mom that always text. And then, strangely enough, when we played against Ireland and we beat that game and qualified, it was my dad that actually sent me a voice note saying well done, and the whole family's proud and everything. And that was again like a little special moment, because you could see that for him, that was his side of the family, and that was a special moment for him and his family to be able to experience that with me. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of a extra pride in that moment.
You've hinted at this already, but I guess the playing for Namibia and playing for South Africa, two very different teams, aren't they, in kind of their stature on the world stage, and the expectations in each team are very different. I imagine you kind of, as Namibians, you're looking for the giant kill. As South Africans, there's an expectation to win things.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to, as South Africa, you're going to every single IC tournament with, first of all, that expectation of lifting the trophy, but then you've also got that tag of, a little bit of, you don't want to say the word, but the chokers or whatever, always in that situation. So there's that pressure that you have to deal with. And like you said, pressure of always being expected to win. But then playing for Namibia, it was almost a case of, I thought it would be relaxing and, just not relaxing, but it'll be fun. It'll go play there, But I found the pressure, at the start there, especially I put on myself, was, even more than playing for South Africa, because, I was coming in with this reputation of, playing for South Africa, playing franchise cricket all over the world, and now coming into the Namibian side, straight into a World Cup. There was a lot of talk about, what am I going to do for the team, the expectations. And I felt a lot of pressure, going into that World Cup, because I wanted to prove to everybody, I'd been out of international cricket for 5-6 years when I signed Kolpak, and I just wanted to prove that I'm still capable of, performing on the big stage. So, that was a lot of pressure for me, personally, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, being the guy that the captain would turn to, make the play and to put in the big performances. And, lucky for me, against Netherlands and against Ireland, I managed to put in some good performances to let us qualify. And, from that moment, I was kind of like, okay, I can relax now. The guys see my worth. They understand why the coach wanted to bring me in, and then I could just enjoy the tournament from there.
You really did go from being, this is very simplistic, but a little fish in a big pool to being the big fish in the smaller pool, didn't you? And the expectations that brings. Yeah,
100%. I mean, I was the only guy in that Namibian team who had any experience playing, not just, franchise cricket, but kind of, the World Cups. And, Namibia played a lot of international cricket, but, it was at the associate level, and they never really played against any test nations. And, there was a lot of, talk about me switching from South Africa to Namibia, bringing that experience, bringing that X factor to the team. And, like I say, now suddenly you're this big fish and everybody's looking at you and looking at you to put in the big performances, and you've got to stay composed, and you try and, put in those performances. And it didn't start off that well for me. I think my first game, I got like a duck for them in a warm-up game and everything. So that just compounded everything. And then first game against Sri Lanka, we got blown out of the water, and it was just a lot of things that was, compounding the whole time. And then, luckily against Netherlands, it all came together. And then from there, it just pushed on.
Did you find that people, players in the Namibian side, not looked up to you, maybe the wrong thing, but kind of picked your brains and maybe tried to find out a little bit learn from you, because you'd obviously been and done things they hadn't done?
Yeah, I noticed that immediately. The Namibian guys, they were so welcoming, and they were so eager to learn. All of those guys, they come from backgrounds where they're just good, hardworking people, and they're just so keen to learn. The facilities and the opportunities that you have in Namibia is very limited. So when they got the chance to go to a World Cup or to play international cricket, and they really want to learn and try and immerse himself in it as much as they possibly could. So, as soon as I got there were guys that was picking my brain. There was guys that was chatting to me about the game the whole time. Me and Gerard Erasmus, formed a really good friendship, him being the captain and a hell of a player that he is. And for me, that was the nice thing, because they accepted me immediately. They didn't see me as this outsider just coming in to try and, play international cricket. They accepted me immediately. We all bought into the plan of going to this World Cup. And, that also kind of eased the pressure, because I knew that even if I wasn't putting in the performances, I was still helping the team in other ways also.
Was it quite hard? I mean, mentioned earlier that you were 42 days ago, but was it hard to turn your back on that and retire from that? Because sounds like you had fun playing for them.
It was tough, and at that stage when I decided to retire, it seemed like the right time for me. I loved my time with Namibia, and it's a place that I really hold close to my heart. But at that stage, it was okay. I'm 30. When was it? Last year. So I was 39 years old. The next T20 World Cup I thought was only going to be in October next year in 2026. So I'll be like, well, that's still 2.5 years away. I don't know if I'm still going to be playing at that stage. And my thinking was, there was a couple youngsters, couple under 19 guys coming through. So I didn't want to, keep them out of the team for 18 months and then decide to pull the plug and not play anymore. And then they didn't have that exposure. So that was my main thinking going into it. I always kind of left the door a little bit open just to see what happens. But in my mind, it was like, it was great. It was, I really enjoyed myself, went off at the World Cup, had a nice little send off there. And then all of a sudden, as we sit here today, I'm like, well, I'm still busy playing. I'm still fit and strong and feeling good. And the World Cup's less than a year away. So it's kind of like that catch-22. Like, I didn't think I would be in the position last year where I would still be playing international cricket or still be, but now I'm sitting here, it's less than a year away, and I'm like, well, maybe I could have still played another World Cup, but I'm very happy with the way things ended. I'm content, and maybe I'll still go to the World Cup as a consultant or as a coach or something. You never know. I told them maybe I'll always be involved and I'll always be there for them if they need me. So you never know what the future holds with that.
So if the phone rings tomorrow and they say, it's not that far away, David, let's get you back in the strip again, would you say yes?
The phone has rang already. I'm not going to lie to you. The conversations have been there. Especially Namibia's got a new coach now. They've got a new coach, and it's actually a good friend of mine who's the coach. So he's gotten in touch with me. There's a couple factors that are kind of in the way at this stage. We've got the World Cup qualifiers coming up, which is something in September, but unfortunately I've signed for the CPL, so I wouldn't be available for that. So there's kind of a couple obstacles, but we're working through it. We're seeing what we can do. But like I said, at this stage, in my mind, it's still a chapter that's closed, and it was a great chapter for me in my life. But it's something that I look back fondly, but I don't think I'll be able to open that chapter at this stage.
Okay, close, but maybe watch this space a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah.
We've done the best day. and you chose a couple, but let's flip it to the worst day. Is there a day that you thought, oh, blimey, no, I don't want to, and if I offered you the chance, you wouldn't want to relive that day again? What's the low?
It wasn't. There wasn't a specific day, to be honest with you. I mean, cricket is a game that's built around disappointment. I can go and pinpoint games where I had to defend 15 or 16 off the last over, and then they got it, and then you feel disappointed, or where you had to go and try and score 10 in the last over, and you fall short and you're disappointed. But the sun always comes up the next day, and that's one thing that I learned throughout my career, is that you don't define yourself on your performances, you define yourself on the person that you are, and I've always tried to pride myself on that. But there was a time where an entire season was just too much for me, where at the end of that season, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And that was in 2017, the first year when I signed Kolpak and went to go play with Sussex. I had a tough season there. I struggled to adapt to the conditions in the UK. I struggled to adapt to, just the schedule of playing county cricket. It's just the whole time going, it's this hamster wheel. And once you start having a bad time of it, it's just this, hamster wheel that goes the whole time. And at the end of that season, I wasn't really enjoying cricket that much at that stage. I was kind of thinking, is this something that I want to do? Is it something that maybe, I go back to South Africa and just, keep playing over there? That was a bit of a tough season for me. And thankfully, I sat down with my wife, and she was kind of like, look, you've signed a 3-year contract. You're 1 year into it now. Let's just see what next year brings. Let's just, maybe next year, comes about and you start enjoying it a bit more. And, thankfully for me, the next year came, and Jason Gillespie became my coach, and we formed a good relationship, and I had a pretty decent season from there again, and from there just kicked off. But that specific 2017 season was just very overwhelming for me at that stage.
Was part of that, I mean, coming to the UK at that stage as a Kolpak meant you turned your back on international cricket, didn't it? Was that part of it as well? That was quite a big decision, I guess.
I think it was a bit of it, because when I signed Kolpak and turned my back on international cricket, I was very content with my decision. I was at that stage where I was in and out of I was in the T20 squad, but I was in and out of the ODI squad. I felt like I'd stagnated a little bit. There wasn't really anything that stimulated for me to whatever. And then the opportunity came with Sussex, and I was really excited about that. And then you kind of, you always got one eye on what's going on in South Africa, and then you see, okay, well, this guy is now, he's retired, or he's lost form and he's been chosen, but oof, man, maybe I could have been, there instead of, and then you start thinking to yourself, I played 26 games for South Africa, could I have played more? Could I have maybe gotten a test call up? If I just stayed a year longer, what would have happened? So I think, maybe that was in the back of my mind also, because, it's a dream that you have as a child, playing for South Africa, and then you achieve that. And, I signed Kolpak, and then suddenly I got called up back to South Africa again to play in the T20s against Sri Lanka. And then I had to turn that down because I'd signed Kolpak, because nobody knew that I'd signed Kolpak, because I wasn't really part of the squad at that stage. And then suddenly they phoned me and they were like, well, you're in the squad. And then I had to tell them, well, thank you, but I've signed Kolpak, so I'm not available anymore. So there was a lot that was going on during that season. And I think, like I said, it just became a little bit overwhelming. And then you start thinking about the past and what could have happened. And it was a tough time that year.
How did that work? Did you seek out a Kolpak deal in English county cricket, or did somebody come to you and offer it?
No, not at all. It was actually, I played for Sussex in the Blast in 2016 as an overseas player. So Chris Jordan was still playing for Sussex at that stage, and I was playing for RCB in the IPL, and CJ was there also. And he just came to me one day and was like, look, we're looking for a overseas player for 4 or 5 games. Would you be available? And I had a little bit of a gap before I was going to the CPL, so I was like, yeah, it sounds awesome. I went to Sussex and I did well there, my 4 or 5 games in the Blast. And then they asked me if I would come back and play 4-day games after the CPL again at the end of the season. And I was like, well, why not? We'll experience that also. And I enjoyed my time there. And also I did quite well in those games. And then they came to me at the end of the season and said, look, would you be interested in signing Kolpak? And then I didn't really know what Kolpak was about at that stage. And then I read up a little bit more and, saw that you had to give up international cricket. I could play as a local and, I had those conversations with the family and, at that stage, it was exciting. It was an exciting prospect. And in my mind, it was case, okay, well, I'll sign Kolpak, I'll play all these franchise tournaments and, I'll ride off into the sunset and everything will be awesome. And as things work out, that first season I lost my IPL contract. I didn't get picked up at any franchise gigs and I was sitting in the UK having probably the worst season of my life. So it was quite a learning experience.
That's one of the things I always think with this franchise thing. If you get on it and you're playing really well, you obviously alert other teams around the world that you're doing well, and people start to maybe make the phone calls and bid for you in auctions and what have you. But if you have a bad time in a couple of tournaments, you can quickly drop off the radar, can't you?
Yeah, 100%. I always equated that, every tournament that you play is just an audition for the next tournament. If you have, a good tournament, then you're the flavor of the month and you're going to get called in for the next one. And if you have a bad tournament, then people start wondering, what's going on. And I think, it depends how successful you've been in the past. I think if you've built up a bit of a reputation, you can afford to have, maybe one bad tournament. But if you have back-to-back bad tournaments, then people start asking the question. And specifically for someone who's maybe, towards the back end of their career, a lot of the guys who go in the franchise circuit is guys who've played the international cricket. They're in the latter stages of their career now, and they're trying to maximize their earnings as much as they can. And, for guys like that, as soon as you start pushing a certain age, if you have a bad tournament, the question starts arising, is he getting too old? Is he still capable? Is he still, fit? Has his eyes gone? All of those fantastic questions. So it is tough because there's so much insecurity and it's so much based on performance, tournament per tournament that, you've always got to be on your game.
Yeah, there's that phrase in sport, more clubs than Jack Nicklaus. I looked at your Cricinfo page and I don't think it lists every club on that.
No,
I think there's missing.
There's no space.
There's a lot of teams you've played for.
Yeah.
How easy is it to rock up at a new team, put on a different shirt, play a new tournament, and give them 100%? Because it is a bit of a treadmill at times, isn't it?
It is 100%. I always try and see it as if I pitch up at a new team, my goal is for that team to want me back the next season. Because that then means that I've contributed to the team on and off the field. For me, the biggest compliment is if you get retained for the next year, because that means that they've enjoyed you, you've done well, and they see value in you. So I always try and pitch up if it's a new team. You've got that pressure of you want to show what you can do. You want to prove why you're the overseas signing, and also a lot of the times in these franchise tournaments there's 6 or 7 overseas guys but only 4 spots, so that you only got 2 or 3 opportunities, and if you don't put in those performances, then you're on the bench and somebody else is out there. So I've always tried to go into each tournament and you want to put in those big personal performances, but I also try and show my value towards the team more and not just on the individual aspect. Try and get involved in training, help the younger guys, so that if things don't go that well, at least they're still seeing value in you in the other side of things that you do also. And then maybe they'll think he's just had a bad season, but he brought value off the field, so maybe we'll give him another go type of thing.
It's a bit like having a first date with a new partner and getting that second date, isn't it? I guess
Yeah.
Who was your cricket hero when you were young? Was there a poster boy, somebody that you looked up to and thought, I'd quite fancy being that person?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, growing up, Hansie Cronje was just someone that we all idolized. And, as cricketers, I know towards the end of his career, he made a couple of mistakes and, he was a lot in the media about, his mistakes that he made. But, before that, he was the leader of the team. He was the team that brought, he was the guy that brought the team together. He was the fittest. He was the strongest. He always just led by example the whole time. And at that stage in South Africa, it was so volatile with, the different cultures coming together, and he just managed to somehow just bring everybody together. And for me, that was just always amazing to see the way he portrayed himself, and then also the performances that he put in that backed it up. And unfortunately, everybody can make mistakes, and his were made public towards the end. But for me, it was always growing up, I always loved watching him play and loved watching him compete.
Really sad how that ended, wasn't it? Because I don't think I've met quite a few South African cricketers down the years, and nobody's got a bad word to say about him. But the way he was portrayed from the outside, I never met him. He was the villain at the end, wasn't he? And it's quite really sad how that finished.
Yeah, and for me, it's all about, back then, back now, we play, at the stage now, there's so much about anti-corruption, anti-doping, we go every single tournament, you need to do the whole anti-corruption course, and they warn you about this and that, whatever. There's a lot of education behind it, but back then there was nothing, there was nothing that was about illegal betting, spot betting, all of that. And, unfortunately, he was the fall guy for everything that's happened, and because of what happened with him, we now get to be more educated about the dangers out there. But back then, nobody knew about that type of stuff, and obviously there was no social media, there was no that. So it was a lot easier to think you could do something and get away with it back then. But it's still like, it was very, really sad to see how things portrayed and how things played out in the media in the end.
I don't know if you were out there, actually. I went out to the UAE, and there was a tournament, the Abu Dhabi T20 or something. There were teams from all over the world. Nashua Titans were playing in it, I think. Like Boucher was the coach. But I catch a lift on, if you were there, I catch a lift on your team bus one day. But there was even a fairly small tournament, really, in the great scheme of things. But there was a big evening where all the players shuffled up into a room and did the anti-corruption talk there. So even at every single level that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes we kick up a bit of a stink of it, because every single tournament that you play in, T10, T20, 50, every single tournament, if it's ICC sanctioned, you have to do the anti-corruption and you have to do the anti-doping. And
we've heard all this before.
You probably do about 6 or 7 of them a year, and you sit there and it's the same presentation, and it's the same guy, Shane, bless him, Dave Spy. He does it every single time, and he's got this. But it's something that we have to do, and we've said the whole time, surely we can do once a year, we can just do a presentation and then whatever. But the ICC, and rightfully so, they're very strict on the anti-corruption, and it gets updated the whole time. They get new people of interest the whole time that you have to look out for. So it is something that's quite tedious, especially when you get to a tournament and you have to now sit through this half an hour of same old. But end of the day, that's what we signed up for, and that's what we have to do.
And I guess at every tournament, there's probably a newbie there that's never been there before, that's never heard it before. So you've got to kind of bring them into it as well.
That's the thing, yeah.
Anyway, we're going to take a very short break, and we're going to thank seatfrog.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. Here's how you can get involved with them.
We all want a bit of that first class lifestyle, right?
Well, with Seatfrog, you can travel first class on trains for a lot less.
We're talking up to 60% off first class tickets using our upgrade options.
Think eBay, but for train tickets.
Win your upgrade and you can enjoy food, drink, and a whole lot of legroom. We've got the alcohol.
It's beyond simple to sign up and start bidding. Just download Seatfrog and upgrade your ticket today.
Thank you very much indeed to Seatfrog. It's the app that helps you upgrade your standard class tickets to first class for up to 60% off. Quote, Cricket Frog, and you can get £5 off as well. Lovely to have David Wiese with me on the Cricket Badger podcast today. And so we've only got, actually, a small fraction through the 20 questions. So let's race through the next ones. Cool. If you could trade lives and jump into the skin of any other current cricketer and have their skill, their lives for a day, who would you pick?
Ooh, at this present moment, I would go for Nicky P. just purely as a cricketer, I mean, he's hitting sixes for fun, and it just looks like he's having so much fun when he's batting out there at the moment. He's just in the form of his life. He's such a good bloke. Also, I've played quite a bit with him, and he's a great guy, and he's an awesome player. So I think, if I could just go play one game in his skin and just to be able to do what he could do would be awesome.
Nicholas Poran then for David Wiese.
Mm.
I'm putting you in charge of World Cricket for the day. Got David Wiese on the door at the ICC. You're in the top room. What's the first thing you would do? Is there any change you'd make to the game to make things better?
I wouldn't change anything for the game per se. I think the game is in a good space at the moment. The thing that I would change though, and this is obviously being associate biased, is I would really push a bit more for the associate cricket, to play more against test nations and to get more exposure. I mean, I've seen now, I've played quite a bit of associate cricket, and there's a lot of talent out there, and there's a lot of guys who really are talented but just don't get that opportunity. And we saw just, I think, a day or two ago, UAE beating Bangladesh. UAE have beaten New Zealand before. We beat Sri Lanka also. Ireland has upset a few guys. I know they're a test nation now, but back then they were associate nation. So, if I could change anything, I would really, get the associate guys more involved. I would say in franchise tournaments also, I would go, and if you want ICC sanction, you have to have 2 associate guys in your squad, not necessarily playing, but just have them in the squad. The learning that they can have. If you have associate guys rubbing shoulders with guys in the IPL, best players in the world, best coaches in the world, not just playing, but just learning from them and just seeing how they go about their business, I think that would grow the game, so much more for associate nations.
I think that's a brilliant answer. If you were, I'm going to allow you to have a hotline to the 10-year-old David Wiese. Is there any advice you would give him? And if you were that 10-year-old David Wiese, would you be proud of the 40-year-old David Wiese and where he's got to?
I think if I could go back and just whisper in his ear, I would first of all say, don't be so hard on yourself. I was, as a youngster, I was really hard on myself, and I put so much emphasis on being perfect and perfection and performances the whole time. Even into my early 20s, when I started playing professionally, I put so much emphasis on performance and put just too much pressure on myself, and that sometimes was to my detriment. But I think if I have to look back now, even sitting here at the moment, not even as a 10-year-old, sitting now, I'm proud of the career that I've had. If I have to think of where I started, late bloomer, not really getting opportunities when I was younger, not featuring in schools cricket. I was never SA under 19 or anything like that. To turn around and play 700 odd professional games of cricket. I would have taken that any day of the week. So, I'm very proud sitting here of, the career that I've had. And also I feel like the impact that I've had also, like I said, I've always, tried to not just be the, David Wiese the cricketer, but David Wiese as the person also. And, as I've gotten older, I've tried to mentor the younger players and tried to get involved more with the off cricket, off field type of cricket stuff that goes on. And, I'm proud of all the, impact that I've had so far.
If you could have been famous, successful in another field, where would you have liked to have achieved something?
That's a catch-22 because I'm not the guy that likes cameras. I don't like the attention. So I wouldn't want to be famous where there's paparazzi and all of that stuff, the whole time. I think if maybe, like I said, maybe professional golfer, famous like a Tiger Woods type of golfer. Not quite Tiger Woods because he was just massive, but just like a nice professional golfer who goes about his business, earns a good living, plays a bit of good golf once in a while, maybe wins 1 or 2 majors. Be content with that. But not too much like in the public spotlight the whole time. I've never really enjoyed that side of it.
I'm going to give you a dinner party. There's 3 empty seats. They can be living or dead. You can invite anybody to that dinner party. Who would you invite?
Hansie Cronje. first and foremost. Roger Federer. Love to be able to pick his brain and just speak about sport and life and everything with him. And then, only 3 people. That's tough. I think, yeah, let me go with Tiger Woods. Keep it a sports conversation. Keep it going there. Yeah. So I think Tiger Woods would be the third person. Yeah.
They're going to make Wiese the movie. Steven Spielberg and all the big directors are really excited about this, and they're trying to cast the lead role. Who's going to play you in that movie?
Oh, I've been told so many times that I look like Nicolas Cage, with the long hair loose in, like, I think it's Con Air is the movie or something. It's either that or John Wick, Keanu Reeves. I've been told that so many times. So I'll have to probably go with those guys because people just keep saying that I look like them. And I know if I have to be in a band, they would say Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters. That's the other one that I always get the whole time. So yeah, let's go with Nicolas Cage.
It's Dave Grohl. Whenever I see you play, I always think of the Foo Fighters. That's such a
yeah, I get that so many times.
What's the last time you can remember feeling really nervous? Are you a nervous kind of cricketer where you overthink and you kind of worry about stuff, or do you just take it in your stride?
No, I think it's good to be nervous. You can use that nervous energy the whole time. Funny enough, I get more nervous batting than bowling. When I'm bowling, I think when you're bowling, it's because you're the one in control. You've got the ball, you can control what the outcome. When you're batting, it's always about you need to react to what the bowler does. So, I would say almost every single time before I go out and bat, there's always just this nervous energy that I have, the little bit of butterflies in your stomach, and then as soon as I get onto the field, got a little bit of routine that you do, and then that settles, and then you just get in the zone, and then you go and play what's ahead of you.
What's the top item on your bucket list? Things to do before you die. Is there anything that you'd love to tick off before you take your last breath?
I recently came back.
Hopefully that's not.
So I recently came back from Iceland. That was for my 10-year wedding anniversary. My wife and I went there. That was a little bucket list item that we wanted to go see the Northern Lights. So I ticked that off my bucket list. This is going to be sentimental for me. I've got two young daughters. I'd love to be able to walk them down the aisle one day. That would probably be the ultimate, bucket list for me. Check that is, just to be able to still be physically in a good condition to be able to walk and to be able to walk them down the aisle one day.
Nice answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being me and 10 being the coolest person you've ever seen, where are you on that scale? How cool is David Wiese?
No, I'll probably give myself a solid 4, maybe a 5 on a good day. I've been known to be a little bit. I suppose people call me grumpy, but I'm a quiet guy. I like to listen. I don't like to talk. I like to listen. I'll be that guy. I remember when I was younger, starting out by the Titans, we would have guys, in the change room, Jock Rudolph, Martin van Jaarsveld, those guys have played so much international cricket, and after a game, I would always just kind of wedge myself close enough there to just listen to the conversations the whole time, and just try and pick up as just like that weird lurker that just stands there in the corner and just listens the whole time. That's the type of person I've always been. I wouldn't say I'm the loudest or the life of the party or anything. I've always enjoyed listening to other people. I've always enjoyed getting other people's insights and then trying to take 1 or 2 little golden nuggets out of other people's lives and trying to implement that in mine. And because of that, I suppose I sometimes come across as being a little bit shy, a little introverted, grumpy sometimes. But yeah, that's just always the type of person I've been.
Fortunately, you've had some words today, because you'd have been a terrible interviewee if you just listened to me all the way through and not said anything. But anyway,
I've matured.
I've just, if you look out your window, there's a time machine just been delivered to your property. You can take it forwards in time or backwards in time. It could be cricket. It could be anything else. Where would you like to drive that time machine and rock up?
Wow. I would like to. That's a tough one. I'd like to, go back in time to about 12 years and invest in Bitcoin. That would be nice.
What do you
But
think of an answer?
again,
I'll just tell the listeners and the viewers that when I invite people on the podcast, I always say to them, we're going to do the 20 questions. You can see them in advance, or you can take them on. And David basically said, I'll go with the flow. And I said, well, I think it works quite better if you see people actually thinking about stuff and working it out on the screen. And this is where we see David working it out.
So I think I've enjoyed my career so much. I've had so much fun, and I think I would go back to the first day of playing professional cricket, not to change anything, just to have it all over again. I've been so fortunate to, like I said, I've played for so many teams, I've met so many people, and I've seen so many different places in this world that I would never have seen if I wasn't doing this. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I would just like to experience it all over again.
I'm going to give you a second property anywhere in the world. I mean, as you've just said, you've been pretty much everywhere. Certainly on the cricket map, you've been everywhere. Where would you like to have a second home?
I love New York. New York for me is just an awesome place. If I could have like a penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side there in New York, that would be amazing. But then also, I suppose if I could have a nice little beach cottage in Bora Bora somewhere or something, nice little cottage in the Maldives, that'd also not be too bad. But I think if you had to offer me anything, I'll have to go for a nice little penthouse apartment in New York City.
You're stretching the Cricket Badger podcast budget here. I'll send you the keys across. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would you change?
I would, again, maybe I would be a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more comfortable in myself. I've not enjoyed the sound of my voice. I've always thought I'd sound like a bit of a buffoon sometimes, to be honest. So I think if I could just change, maybe your self-perception, then or maybe just to be able to see yourself as other people see you, that could be quite cool. Just so that you could feel a bit just more comfortable in your skin.
David Wiese, we got to question number 19, and so we've cracked through them. And thank you very much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Question number 19 is: what will you be doing in 10 years' time?
Hopefully not too much, to be honest with you. Hopefully by that time I've got all my ducks in a row, and I can be able to sit at home and enjoy family life and watch my daughters grow up and do their ballet dancing and do everything. I've always kind of, I've really sacrificed quite a lot with my family over the last couple of years. I've spent a lot of time from home, and my wife's been an absolute superstar with, being by herself, raising the kids. We've had good family support, but, ultimately, all the responsibility of raising the family has fallen on my wife. And, I've always had this idea that by the time I turn 50, I can retire completely and I can just, be at home 24/7 and basically be a stay-at-home dad and just watch my kids grow up. That's probably going to take a little bit more work than over the next couple of years. But if I can, in 10 years' time, be able to just sit back and enjoy my family and watch my kids grow older, that would be perfect for me.
Well, this franchise treadmill and going around the world, and I guess the money's not bad. You're picking up some decent checks along the way, so maybe retirement at 50 isn't the pipe dream.
Yeah, I'd like to think that, that gives me now like, another 10 years to, play a couple, maybe a year or two. And then I've really enjoyed, like I said, going to the mentoring the younger players. So, going into, one or two coaching gigs with a franchise team, that could be quite fulfilling also. And then, maybe just get involved in one or two things back in South Africa, for the next 10 years or so. And then, we'll take it from there. Ultimately, you can only do as much as you can. And for me, I've been fortunate enough to have quite a long career, and financially, it's like you say, the franchise cricket and the dollar does go quite a long way in South Africa, to be honest with you. So if I can be able to retire at the age of 50 and just sit back and play a bit of golf and watch my kids grow up, it'll be amazing.
I came out to the Champions Trophy in 2012? It was in South Africa, wasn't it?
It was
yeah, and I was following Yorkshire and Hampshire, doing some stuff with them, and fortunately Yorkshire qualified for the main event and stayed out there for the duration. It was great. And you're right, the dollar or the pound gets quite a bit in South Africa. We had some very good nights out and some very nice steaks and stuff, and not that much money. So I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in South Africa. It's a wonderful place. If I could have a second home anywhere, I think I'd probably stick it in Cape Town. I love my time in Cape Town.
No, Cape Town it's an amazing place, and we're so fortunate that people have you say you want to go to these holiday destinations, and we go to Cape Town 3, 4, 5 times a year type of thing. My family has a holiday home down there, so you kind of take it for granted that how fortunate you are to be able to call a place like that your second home, basically.
That's a lovely part of the world. Final question, David Wiese, is, and it's my kind of cop-out question, really, because I've tried to ask you decent questions and get as much out of you as I can. But if there is one question I've missed, one question you'd have asked yourself on this podcast today, which I haven't asked you, what would you have asked yourself to get a good answer?
Was it all worth it?
And the answer is?
I think that is always the big question that I ask myself, is that, is it all worth it at the end of the day? Being a professional cricketer, it takes so much out of you physically, mentally, and then your family, the sacrifices that you make for your family. It's a career that people think is all glamorous, and it's awesome, and I've loved every moment of it. But there is times where you're sitting in a hotel somewhere in Bangladesh and you're by yourself and you're missing your friend's wedding or your daughter's birthday, and then you start questioning, am I being selfish? Is this all worth it? Is it just you chasing this pipe childhood dream of being a cricketer? And that's something that I've asked myself a lot, especially getting towards the back end of my career now. I keep asking myself, when is it enough? How much more do you want to do? I could get to the stage where I'm 50 years old and I've put so much strain on my body that, like I said, I can't really be that active anymore. So I always ask myself, is it worth it? Sacrifices you've made? And the easy answer for me would be absolutely. Like I said, I've enjoyed every single moment that I've had in my career. I've had the highs, I've had the lows. I've done things differently. I haven't always followed the normal path, and I've been very fortunate enough to have a family that supports me, to have a wife that has bought in with this lifestyle, and I've just really enjoyed it so much that I would wish it upon anybody in the world, to be honest with you.
That is a very, very good way to finish this podcast. What a lovely answer to finish it off with. David Wiese, it's been an absolute joy to speak to you today. Thank you for coming on and being a guest on the Cricket Badger podcast today.
Thanks for the invite. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thanks again to seatfrog.com. Download their app, get cheap train tickets and upgrades to first class as well. And we'll see you very soon again on the Cricket Badger podcast. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody.